Hello there, you're watching Nightline. I am Anita Wu. News making the headlines. Stop COVID-19 and save the economy. We can do both, says MTUC. And government to impose price controls on essentials. We begin with our headlining story. As the COVID-19 pandemic shuts down the world's economies and unemployment rises, policymakers will be forced to figure out how to contain the outbreak while preventing financial and economic collapse. As such, the Malaysian Trades Union Congress MTUC President Dato' Abdul Halim Mansor has urged the government to allow business and trade operations in key areas to resume business.
Dengan ini secara tidak langsung kita akan dapat bergerak bersama dalam memerangi COVID-19, iaitu satu pihak di bahagian hadapan dan satu pihak lagi menentukan bahawa kita cukup keuangan, kita kuat ekonomi untuk menentukan kita menyokong peperangan ini. Kerana dengan ekonomi yang mampan, bahawasanya kita dapat menggerakkan tenaga bagi memerangi COVID-19 ini dengan lebih jayanya.
Dato' Abdul Halim said some 50% of employees are also at risk of being laid off because they are not protected by the stimulus measures announced to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And if this happens, it could lead to economic catastrophe. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Employers Federation also called on the government to allow industries supplying raw materials for essential items to resume their businesses during the MCO. Its Executive Director, Datuk Shamsuddin Bardan, said this would ensure the supply chain and production of essential items during the MCO were not disrupted. In the meantime, the small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, is proposing for the government to allow SMEs to partially operate during the MCO period in order for them to fulfill their orders, especially for exports, because many SMEs are in the global supply chain. Malaysian SME Association National President Datuk Michael Kang Hua Kiong said global buyers will find other products among ASEAN markets if local SMEs cannot fulfill their orders.
If the order been cancelled, I think it will take a long time to rebuild the orders to get it back. As the order, they might switch it to neighbor countries and will face the challenges. And the other thing is, if we allow also, we can also make sure the SME are survive with the additional cash flow in and to generate, to sustain the job for the employment.
For the record, SMEs contribute almost 39% to Malaysia's economy and hire 60% of the country's workforce. Local automotive companies will be among the selected sectors that would be allowed to resume operations during the MCO. This will ensure the local auto component manufacturers, with an estimated 140,000 workers, will remain competitive in the global market.
Bermakna syarikat-syarikat tempatan yang membekalkan komponen kepada pengeluar yang mengeksport boleh memohon untuk menjalankan operasi mereka. Bagi sektor lepas jualan pula, kebenaran operasi ini hanya terhad kepada pusat servis dan pembaikan kenderaan, tak kiralah kenderaan kereta ataupun commercial vehicles.
Pelanggan-pelanggan kami daripada luar negara dah memohon stok-stok ini yang diperlukan oleh mereka. Juga saya rasa harga kereta di Malaysia tidak akan terjejas kerana on the road price adalah sama. Kita bayar cukai-cukai sama seperti dulu.
Well, the automakers have also called on the government to consider special incentives to ensure vehicle sales are not badly affected after the movement control order. It is estimated that the country's automotive export sector is worth 15.5 billion ringgit annually. Among the exporters are Perodua, Volvo, Mazda and Peugeot. Many local companies also supply components for vehicle assembly, especially in Indonesia and Thailand. The government will impose a maximum price control scheme on essential items starting from April 15th until the end of the Movement Control Order MCO period. Senior Minister of Security Cluster Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the move was to avert the possibility of profiteering by irresponsible parties during the extended two-week period.
Semua barang keperluan asas berada pada tahap yang stabil, di mana kedudukan keberadaan bekalan adalah mencukupi, termasuk topeng muka dan sanitizer juga berada di pasaran dan boleh diperolehi.
He also assured Malaysians that they have no need for panic buying as there is sufficient supply in the country. As for food supplies, he said both the Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Ministry, KPDN-HEP, and the Agriculture and Agri-Based Industry Ministry briefed the Cabinet on Sunday that the supply of all food items, especially rice, was more than enough. Datuk Seri Ismail said the KPDN-HEP had conducted daily checks across the country on the availability of some 25 essential items in the market. He added, as of Saturday, a total of 1,205 special spot checks were conducted involving businesses at retailers, wholesalers and manufacturers. In his daily media briefing, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri also said that the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, KPWKM, together with the police, have set up a special hotline to help victims of domestic violence and child abuse. Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri appeared to be acknowledging reports of the rise in abuse cases happening in families amid the MCO, a period where all Malaysians are told to stay home to curb the spread of COVID-19.
Ianya ada link dengan PDRM dan PDRM akan mengambil tindakan segera berdasarkan aduan tersebut. Malah jika ada laporan yang nak dibuat kepada pihak polis, rakyat kita boleh membuat aduan melalui online seperti WhatsApp dan sebagainya direct kepada pihak polis dan pihak polis boleh mengambil tindakan segera berdasarkan aduan yang diterima.
Those requiring assistance can now call the hotline at 15999 or WhatsApp 019-261-5999 so that police can take immediate action. In the press conference, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri did not mention the number of official complaints received regarding domestic violence and child abuse cases, but women groups have previously reported an increase in such cases received via their own hotlines. The Health Ministry has identified 4 COVID-19 subclusters linked to index patients from the Tabligh gathering in the Sri Petaling Mosque last month. Health Director General Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said in his daily COVID-19 press conference that the subclusters involved madrasah and Tahfiz religious schools in Pahang, Pulau Pinang, Selangor and Malacca. He also urged the public not to blame or discriminate against any patients or groups linked to COVID-19 clusters.
Janganlah kita stigmakan mereka. Apa yang penting adalah kita membantu, mengesan dan merawat jangkitan COVID di kalangan mereka yang terlibat. Orang awam dipohon untuk memberikan kerjasama kepada agensi-agensi terlibat dalam memerangi kejadian COVID-19 di Malaysia.
The Sri Petaling Tabligh cluster makes up most of COVID-19 cases in the country, with Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham previously saying that 5 generations of positive cases had been linked to the gathering at the end of February and beginning of March this year. Dr. Nur Hisham also reported that almost half of the COVID-19 patients in Malaysia have made recovery. Of the 4,683 cases reported, 45% or 2,108 of them have already been discharged from the hospital. 153 new cases were reported on Sunday. In the intensive care unit, there were still 66 patients receiving treatment, with 37 of them requiring respiratory aid. He also reported 3 deaths due to COVID-19 today, bringing the total to 76. The first death is a 54-year-old Malaysian man who died at the hospital Tuanku Jaafar Hospital, Seremban. Another death was recorded at the Taiping Hospital, the victim a 90-year-old man. The last victim is a 47-year-old local woman who is receiving treatment at the Sarawak General Hospital.
104 orang merupakan kaki Timbalan Ketua Pengarah Kesihatan Bahagian Perubatan.
The Health Ministry also revealed that none of the COVID-19 patients discharged from hospitals have experienced reinfection. Dr. Nur Hisham said reinfection has not been detected thus far, although 2 or 3 cases have shown a very weak positive result due to a process he termed virus shedding. We spoke to University Malaya's Tropical Infectious Disease Research and Education Centre Director, Professor Dr. Sazali Abu Bakar, to explain what this means.
When the DG spoke about virus shedding, I wasn't sure whether he was referring to live virus, meaning infectious virus, or it's just a detection of the virus genome. Because it is very common in any virus infection is that once a person fully recovered, but you can still detect the virus genome somewhere in the body. But that doesn't mean that the virus is still alive. For example, you can detect the virus in the urine, you can detect the virus in the stool, yeah. But oftentimes, most of these viruses, they are already dead. But for these particular cases, I'm not sure whether they have shown that the virus that they were able to detect, whether these viruses are still alive and meaning whether it's still infectious. We know that, for example, from data from patients in China, that you can actually detect the virus if you do the rectal swab. I mean, you take the stool sample, you can see that some patients will continue to shed the virus for up to 30 days after infection. So, I mean, that would be a long while, almost a month after. Yeah, but there is no data to show whether this virus were actually infectious. The DG was saying something about, the detection limit was very low. That could be possible also, because when the virus is still very low, even the most sensitive method that we are using now, what we call RT-PCR, may not be able to detect. So that doesn't mean that the virus genome is not there. It's just the limit of the detection of the technique that we use. So it is not surprising that, over time, 2 or 3 days after the patient was detected negative, it will be positive. So, but it's not a new infection. It was just that the presence of the virus genome, not necessarily infectious virus.
Coming up after this breather, 2 gardeners killed in house fire in Permatang, Pauh. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Still on Nightline. A police inspector was remanded for 5 days beginning Sunday for allegedly abducting and raping 2 Mongolian women at a hotel in Petaling Jaya, Selangor. Police said the 30-year-old suspect was arrested at a separate location after authorities rescued the 2 women aged 20 and 37 at the hotel Saturday night.
Maklumat yang kita terima, ada 2 wanita warga negara asing telah ditahan tanpa rela di sebuah hotel dalam DJ. Kita telah membuat perancangan, kita telah membuat pemantauan dan kita telah berjaya menyelamatkan 2 wanita warga negara asing ini di dalam sebuah hotel pada malam semalam. Okay. Apabila diselamatkan, hasil pada siasatan kita telah membuat tangkapan ke atas 1 pegawai polis yang bertugas di Petaling Jaya ini. Okay.
The preliminary probe also revealed that the 2 women, who are now under custody of the police's Sexual Crime Unit, D11, did not have valid travel documents and were suspected to be involved in immoral activities. However, Nikizani stressed that the 2 women were the victims in the case and police will seek an interim protection order for the duo. Meanwhile, 8 local men and 2 Indonesian women were arrested for not only violating the MCO, but also for having a drug-infused karaoke party at an unlicensed entertainment outlet in Georgetown, Pinang on Sunday. Police said the group, aged between 20 and 38, including the illegal karaoke outlet operator, were nabbed at the outlet at Jalan Burma at about 1 a.m. 6 of the male suspects also tested positive for drugs and were remanded today to facilitate investigations. In Putrajaya, a police personnel manning an MCO roadblock in Precinct 14 sustained injuries after he was allegedly assaulted by an Indonesian man. The incident occurred when Lance Corporal Salihuddin Muhammad Sofyan called up the foreigner who was walking through the roadblock to inquire his reason for being outdoors during the MCO. The suspect approached the 39-year-old cop but suddenly started hitting him several times, causing the policeman to sustain injuries to his left eyebrow and hand. The man, who also failed to produce a valid travel document, was subsequently arrested for voluntarily causing hurt and obstructing a public servant from carrying out his duty. Elsewhere in Kedah, a dispatch rider was sentenced by the Alor Magistrates Court to 3 months of community service for hiding his travel history during a COVID-19 screening last month. Omar Mat Khatib pleaded guilty to the charge and chose the sentence instead of 3 months jail after being given the option by Magistrate Nur Hidayah Muhammad Noor. The 31-year-old accused, who works in Singapore, failed to comply with the medical officer's request to provide the information to prevent and control the spread of the virus at the Pinang Health Clinic on March 26th. The offence under the Prevention and Control of Diseases Act provides a fine not exceeding 1,000 ringgit or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months, or both if convicted. Over in Pulau Pinang, 2 men, including a foreigner, were killed after a fire broke out at a house in Kampung Pertama, Permatang, Pauh on Sunday morning. However, 4 others, one of them a child, managed to escape unharmed. State Fire and Rescue Department Operations Officer, Deputy Fire Superintendent 2, Azrul Khairi Abu Bakar, said a distress call on the pre-dawn blaze was received at 4:40 a.m. A team of firemen immediately rushed to the scene, but the house was already 90% destroyed by the time they arrived. The fire was then brought under control by 5:25 a.m. The charred remains of a local man, identified as 65-year-old Teh Siu Wing, was later found inside the raised structure. Another man, a Myanmar national, identified as 45-year-old Muhammad Yunus Yassin, was found unconscious and brought to the Seberang Jaya Hospital, but died while receiving treatment. It's understood that the house was a temporary dwelling for gardeners and their families who worked near the premises. The rest of the occupants were 3 other male Myanmar nationals, aged 3, 13 and 22, as well as a 40-year-old Indonesian woman. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Coming up after this break, US overtakes Italy for the highest death toll in the world from coronavirus. Do stay with us. We're back now with news on the international front. The United States overtook Italy as the country with the most deaths from COVID-19 after its death toll exceeded 20,000 as of Sunday, with the total number of confirmed cases standing at 527,111 currently. According to a tally of Johns Hopkins University, 1,920 deaths related to the coronavirus were recorded over the past 24 hours, which is lower than the previous day's record toll of 2,108. It is understood that New York State has recorded 8,627 deaths, the most in the country, followed by New Jersey and Michigan with 2,183 and 1,276 cases respectively. However, the official figure is believed to be an undercount, as those who've died at home or on the street before they got tested for the coronavirus were left out. Despite the staggering rise, a total of 29,507 patients in the country have recovered. Meanwhile, at the global level, the total number of cases reached 1,767,855 cases from 185 countries, with 108,281 deaths reported. Over in Indonesia, 46 more COVID-19 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours, the highest number of fatalities in a day. According to the government spokesman, Ahmad Yuryanto, with the latest fatalities, the death toll now stands at 359. Yuryanto said 36 of the news deaths were in Jakarta, which has recorded the highest number of deaths at 195. He also noted that 399 new cases were reported, bringing cumulative cases to 4,341. Following the development, the government has imposed curbs on public transport ahead of the annual exodus to home villages that marks the end of the fasting month of Ramadan. Under the new regulations, public buses, trains, airplanes and ships will be allowed to fill only half their passenger seats, while a motorcycle may be ridden only by one person. Meanwhile, Thailand has recorded 33 new cases, which included 7 doctors and medical personnel, as well as 3 more deaths, bringing the tally to 2,551 cases and 38 fatalities. It's the lowest number of daily infections recorded in April and also marks the 4th straight day of decline since 111 cases were reported on April 8th. According to a government spokesman, Tawisil Wisanutin, the latest fatalities were 2 Thai men aged 74 and 44 and a Thai woman aged 65. In India, the Federal Health Ministry on Sunday announced 31 new deaths and 827 new cases on Sunday, taking the total death toll to 273 and the total number of confirmed cases to 8,356. It's reported that Maharashtra has the highest number of cases among India's states and territories at 1,761, including 127 deaths. Sunday marked the 19th straight day of an ongoing 21-day lockdown across the country. The 3-week lockdown was expected to end on April 14th before the government's decision of an extension on Saturday. Over in Europe, Spain's daily death toll from the coronavirus rose to 619 on Sunday, after falling for 3 straight days. The country, one of the worst hit by the pandemic, has now recorded 16,972 deaths from COVID-19. The number of confirmed cases, meanwhile, rose by 4,167 to 166,019, a smaller increase than was recorded on Saturday. Meanwhile, in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been discharged from St Thomas's Hospital to continue his recovery from coronavirus at Chequers, the country house of the Prime Minister in Buckinghamshire. Downing Street said Johnson would have a break from work while he recovers following the decision to discharge him from hospital. The 55-year-old was admitted to St Thomas Hospital in London last Sunday after suffering with coronavirus for 10 days. Next on Nightline, Real Sociedad set to become first Spanish team to resume training. Stay with us. Hello there, we're back with sports news football. The Professional Footballers Association of Malaysia, PFAM, has set 2 conditions if the proposal on players' pay cut, as outlined by world governing body FIFA, is to be adopted. PFAM said in a statement on Sunday that the 2 conditions must be met to avoid any prejudice and to ensure the players' rights were protected. The conditions set by PFAM were that it was mandatory for teams with unpaid salary issues prior to the COVID-19 pandemic to settle the arrears first, and that negotiations as well as agreements be made individually with players. This is because each player gets a different salary and has different needs. As such, they should agree to the different amounts of reduction. This is also to ensure that every player is treated equally and given the right to deal directly with their employers and to subsequently agree with the terms the players themselves considered to be fair, just as how their salary was agreed upon. Elaborating further, PFAM stressed that any elements of coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation and fraud would not be tolerated by the players. Previously, PFAM disagreed with the proposed pay cut following the COVID-19 outbreak, causing the 2020 Malaysian League to be suspended since March 16th. Still on football, we move to the Spanish La Liga. Real Sociedad have announced that they will be returning to training as early as next Tuesday, becoming the first team in Spain to return to training since the coronavirus outbreak. This is after the Spanish government allowed non-essential workers to return to work as of Monday, of which the club believes applies to them. The La Liga club, however, have outlined a series of precautionary measures that could come into effect as early as Tuesday. According to the La Real in a statement, players will be allowed to train in reduced groups, with medical staff overseeing training. It is also stated that only small groups of a maximum of 2 or 3 players are allowed to train together with a recommended COVID-19 test upon arrival to training. Real Sociedad currently sits in 4th place in La Liga with 11 games left in the current season, having lost to Barcelona in their last league run-out on March 7th. As of now, there is still no return date set for La Liga Santander, nor a scheduled date for Copa del Rey final. We'll bring you a quick look at what's been installed on the front pages of Malaysia's main newspapers awaiting you Monday, April 13th. Hair salons wait for more details from MITI takes the front page of the New Straits Times, whereas the nation's best-selling newspaper Harian Metro focuses on airlines' refund policy, cash refund or flight credits for cancelled flights. Berita Harian highlights the price control on essential items during the MCO, and a report on the impact of the postponement of the Olympics on halal products and services takes the front page of the Malaysian Reserve. Be the first to get your copies today or subscribe to the online versions. Now for some uplifting news. In the United States, Dr. Jameson Campbell, dubbed TikTok Doc, has taken the internet by storm with his viral dancing videos. As more than 3 billion people currently under lockdown, the videos have proven just the right medicine to lift everyone's spirit just a little during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's have a look. I'm Manita Wu. Thank you for tuning in and do be well.
Now left foot, right foot, now left foot, right foot, now left foot, right foot, now left foot. One hand, one hand, two hands, two hands, hit your rollie, hit that rollie, do your dance, Now lean with it, rock with it, lean with it, rock with it.
Pulling out the coupe at the lot, told him fuck 12, fuck SWAT, busting all the bells out the box. I just hit a lick with the box, had to put the stick in the box. Pour up the whole damn seal, I'ma get laid.